There is no doubt in my mind that Bloodborne was inspired by H.P. Lovecraft and the magnitude of mystical stories that he had created. When reading the literature of H.P. Lovecraft, you can really see the similarities between his storytelling and the world that he had created, and also the world of Bloodborne. After finishing Bloodborne and its DLC, I was drawn into the world of the game, watching countless YouTube videos revolving around the lore of Bloodborne's twisted and tragic world. I got so invested, in fact, that my YouTube feed was cluttered up with videos revolving around Bloodborne. And then, I saw a video dedicated to H.P. Lovecraft's The Complete Cthulhu Mythos. I watched the video and was instantly hooked, and went to buy the book. And here it is, The Complete Cthulhu Mythos. I absolutely love this book, and from the front, the back, and even on the inside, you can definitely tell where Bloodborne gets its inspiration from. My favourite story in this book is called Dagon, about a man who finds himself on an island which has strange carvings all around the island, depicting a strange fish-like creature. But when he actually comes across this creature in the flesh, he is terrified. He gets on his boat and sails away, but he is luckily picked up by a few sailors. They send him to a hospital in San Francisco, where he's almost going insane. He is convinced that the fish god Dagon is coming for him, as on the last few lines of the story, he is convinced that he sees a hand on the window. And I absolutely love this book. The amount of stories in this book and how you can correlate them to Bloodborne is just absolutely fantastic. I could really not recommend this book enough. Most of Bloodborne's world is broken, burnt and disfigured by the great plague that has consumed the people of Bloodborne. When you start the game, you are getting a blood transfusion by a man surrounded by mystery. He wears a white hat, has a scruffy beard, and has bandages over his eyes. He makes you sign a contract to confirm the process that your character is undertaking, and you are initially left on the table alone until a wolf beast starts to form from the ground. As the beast slowly moves towards you, it starts to burn and disintegrate. And just when you think you're safe, creatures known as messengers start to crawl up your body, until you are ultimately smothered by these naked creatures. You never find out why, but it must have something to do with the transformation that you are currently undertaking. When you wake up on the operating table and exit the transfusion room, at first you are greeted by a wolf beast, which is impossible to kill, and you are sent to the hunter's dream for the first time. When you return to Yharnam, the residents are carrying weapons and torches, and they are ready to attack you as soon as they spot you. When you visit the main town, you are greeted to a lantern, and you enable that lantern and continue exploring, to find out that everyone has been consumed by the plague, and are calling you such things as a plague-ridden rat. The Hunter's Dream is a strange and peculiar place with a workshop placed dead in the centre of it. The entirety of the Hunter's Dream is on a floating island in a sea of white oblivion. There are no other areas to go to except for a field full of white flowers that you cannot enter because the gate is locked. Eventually, you'll come across a doll laying aside a wall. This doll allows you, the hunter, to level up and increase your many attributes. But once you enter the small workshop in the centre of the Hunter's Dream, you will eventually come across Gurman. Gurman is an old hunter damaged by his previous hunts, and is now left with a wooden peg leg and is wheelchair bound. Although he is not able to fight, he still gives you advice, hinting that perhaps he's done this before. After you meet him, you can travel to the real world once again, and whenever you die, you are brought back to life due to being a special hunter, and you can keep hunting another day. On your travels, you will find yourself in the Cathedral Ward. This is where the special healing blood used to be distributed before the Great Plague. This is also the place where you will find Vicar Amelia, a woman of faith who is transformed into a wolf-like creature clutching a charm in her hand. Once defeated, you can interact with a skull that plays a short cinematic. A man called Master William in the cinematic says, "We are born of blood, made men by blood, undone by the blood," insinuating that the blood has something to do with the plague. Eventually you will find yourself in Old Yharnam, a city of decaying architecture. This city was built over by the Yharnam that you see at the start of the game, letting the past die. Old Yharnam has the same plague and is presumed to have had the plague first, and so it was built over and forgotten about. After exploring around the Cathedral Ward, you can find yourself in a swampy forest which leads to the abandoned school of Byrgenwerth. The abandoned school of Byrgenwerth was a place where they studied the depths of human knowledge. This school is now abandoned and you are not allowed to enter. If you do, outside on a balcony you will find Master Willem, the man we saw in the cinematic after defeating Vicar Amelia. If you take a step off the balcony where Master Willem is pointing and jump into the waters below, you will find Rom the vacuous spider. Once Rom is defeated, you will come across the Pthumerian Queen with blood smothering her white dress. After a brief cinematic, you are brought to Yargul's unseen village, where more and more mystical creatures have suddenly appeared. You are surrounded by giant arachnid-like beings known as Lesser Admagdala. They are clinging to towers and walls all around the city. And after fighting the One Reborn, you will find a corpse which, once interacted with, teleports the hunter to the School of Menses. The School of Menses leads to the Nightmare of Menses. Both the School and Nightmare of Menses contain enemies. Some of these have school-like uniforms. This isn't a coincidence, as these enemies are previous students of the School of Byrgenwerth, who once had hoped to meet a Great One. After killing Mikolash, host of the Nightmare, you eventually come across the Pthumerian Queen once more, and is still covered in blood due to her carrying one of the Great Ones inside of her, as Great Ones cannot carry their own children and must find a surrogate mother to carry their children before they ascend to the Great Ones. You later find Murgo the Wet Nurse, who is protecting an infant Great One. The infant Great One stops crying after you have defeated Murgo the Wet Nurse, and when you return to the Hunter's Dream, the workshop is on fire and the gate to the flower-covered field is now open, with Gehrman sitting on top of the hill, awaiting the Hunter's arrival. From here, the Hunter has a choice to make, out of 3 outcomes. The Hunter can either willfully die to Gehrman's blade and awaken in Yharnam with no plague and no recollection of previous events. The second option is to refuse Gehrman's offer. You fight him and kill him, and then you are greeted by a Great One. It embraces you, wrapping all of its appendages around you. The next you see of yourself is the doll pushing you in a wheelchair, as now you only have one leg. And now you have replaced Gehrman as the host of the Hunter's Dream. Lastly, you can once again refuse Gehrman's offer and kill him. And if you have collected 3 Great One umbilical cords during your time in Bloodborne, instead of being consumed by the Great One, known as the Moon Presence, You can fight it and are victorious. Suddenly you have become an infant great one. The doll picks you up and says, "O good hunter." Now you may be wondering, why haven't I actually made any links to the Cthulhu Mythos yet? Now that's just because I wanted everyone who's watching to get at least a brief overview of the world of Bloodborne. I skipped over so much, but I just wanted a basic understanding of the story of Bloodborne, just so when I make links to Bloodborne that they sort of make sense and everyone gets them on some sort of level. But if you are enjoying this video so far, I hope, then subscribe and turn on that notification button. And yeah, let's just continue with the actual links to the Cthulhu Mythos right now. Dreams as a concept and a theme are very prevalent in Bloodborne, almost as prevalent as blood itself. But dreams in Bloodborne are mentioned both as a concept and are seen as actual locations in the game. Such concepts are also referenced by H.P. Lovecraft in his book The Dream Cycle. In the book, the dream world can be entered by dreaming, but you can also enter the dream world from the real world. If you die in a dream, then you'll wake up in the real world. But if you enter the dream world from Earth and you die, you most certainly will not live to tell the tale. Even the book has omnipotent beings or gods like in the Cthulhu Mythos. These beings are known as Great Ones, a parallel to Bloodborne's Great Ones. We can see the parallels between H.P. Lovecraft's literature and the world of Bloodborne. Hidetaki Miyazaki most certainly derived a good portion of inspiration from H.P. Lovecraft to create the world of Bloodborne, especially from the previous points that I've just made. Miyazaki wanted to try and find an aesthetic that wasn't like Dark Souls. He wanted something fresh to the eyes and deeper to the mind, and I certainly do think that he made it. To gain insight in the world of Bloodborne, you either have to kill a boss, consume a Great One's wisdom, or consume a madman's knowledge. These items are probably the skulls of Byrgenwerth's students, as we know that the students from both Byrgenwerth and Menses were trying to get in contact with Great Ones, and so they have the insight into the greater world that they lived in. Thus, when a player consumes either a Great One's wisdom or a madman's knowledge, they gain a better understanding of the world surrounding them. Insight expands your perception of the world that surrounds you, showing new creatures such as the lesser amygdala, which kill you if you get too close, but these creatures are only seen after gaining insight, or killing Rom the vacuous spider. Whilst playing Bloodborne, you gain insight by defeating mystical creatures, or by consuming skulls of wisdom and knowledge. After doing so, the true reality of the world is revealed to you, and not all is what it seems to be. In the complete Cthulhu Mythos, the protagonists of each story gain insight into the world that they are in. By experiencing these strange and mystical creatures firsthand, they are learning that they are not alone in the world. After defeating Rom the vacuous spider, the moon and sky changes. The moon goes from a cool white colour to a blood red, and the sky goes from an orange to a mix of red, blue and purple, obviously insinuating a change. This is most likely derived from another story of H.P. Lovecraft's called What the Moon Brings. I have a small excerpt of this poem to read to you. I shrieked and shrieked, lest the hidden face rise above the waters, and lest the hidden eyes look at me after the slinking away of that leering and treacherous yellow moon. And to escape this relentless thing, I plunged gladly and unhesitatingly into the stinking shallows, where amidst the weedy walls and sunken streets, fat sea worms feast upon the world's dead. This most certainly links the moon in Bloodborne to H.P. Lovecraft. We are meant to fear the moon as if it's an enemy itself, to feel its silent intimidation fill our bodies with dread. Enemies are much more violent when the moon and sky changes. Lesser amygdala are now clinging to the buildings all around you. Your eyes have now been opened in a sense. After killing Vicar Amelia, Master Willem said, "Our eyes are yet to open." And now I think they have been. All perceptions of reality have been merged together, creating a sense of insignificance. In the Micolash boss fight, Micolash says, "Grant us eyes, grant us eyes," linking to the concept of eyes in Bloodborne, and also why so many enemies have hundreds of eyes. Perhaps saying that we need more eyes to see the real world for what it really is. When I was discussing H.P. Lovecraft stories previously, I mentioned that protagonists have to see an uncomprehendable thing to give them true insight into the world that they live in, and perhaps drive them mad, like in the story of Dagoon, where the protagonist seems to go mad after seeing Dagoon in the flesh, as he starts to hallucinate, thinking that Dagoon is coming for him. The Miskatonic University is a place referenced in the Cthulhu Mythos, but it might be paralleled by Byrgenwerth, a school for learning about great ones and learning of a higher truth. The Miskatonic University owns such items as the Necronomicon. They used this to gain a better understanding of the mythos that surrounded them, and there is certainly a link to be seen there. The world of Bloodborne makes many references to H.P. Lovecraft's work, not only through the Cthulhu Mythos, but also to the dream cycle and the poem What the Moon Brings. Bloodborne truly embodies H.P. Lovecraft's work, making it a digital reality that you can explore and learn from. But if you do ever get the chance to pick up either Bloodborne or the complete Cthulhu Mythos, please do, as you'll get a lot more insight into both of their worlds. I'm sorry, I had to put that in there. And just to see how they bleed together to create an intriguing story, using both Bloodborne and the complete Cthulhu Mythos to tell it. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy, then subscribe and turn on the notification button so you don't miss another upload from me. So thank you and goodbye.